So in the end, let's start over. This is what your hierarchy should look like, right? You should have a folder. So I'm going to switch here to this view so we can actually see it. It should indicate that it's your Project 2 folder. In my case, I have lots of different Project 2 folders. So this is my Annie, that's my cousin. This is her particular folder. I have an illustration, a sketches, and a templates folder. Sketches, if you haven't already scanned in your thumbnail sketches or your ink sketches, anything you did to plan for this, scan it in. That way, if your cup of coffee falls on your sketchbook tomorrow, you've got it archived, and you're handing me in everything you did to prepare for this project. All right? So we went over doing that. Those can be submitted just as PDFs. For your illustrations, you may have a layout illustration. You may have a portrait illustration. Some of you may have more illustrations. I know some of you are doing like a more complex illustration in the background instead of just borrowing from another project, which is fine. And then templates is going to be whatever image it is that you're using to draw over, right? So I had 2 templates that I used in this case. I used a background. It's not really a template. It's actually a part of it, but I just put it in the templates folder because then I knew where to find it all. And then the file I was drawing over. At the end, so next week, probably also on Tuesday, we'll talk about how to prepare these files to print them out. All right? But this week's goal is to take that finished or almost finished figure, to move it into an overall layout, even if it's not done. You can still work separately on that figure and that figure thing, but we're going to put what's done so far into our final document so we can start bringing all the other parts together. Now, I'm going to go here and I'm going to actually grab it from another student folder. So let's go in here. And let's pick, I'm afraid I'm going to grab one of yours, I think. Do we have, yeah, this will work great. So let's say I'm going to use this in my background. All right? Instead of monkeying with this and messing it up for all eternity, if I just hold down my Option key and I drag it over here into my illustrations folder, I've now got a copy of it here to work from. And so when I copy it to here, I'm also going to, so single click, then click a second time slowly, and I'm going to rename it. I'm going to call it Demo Back, right? So keeping your naming consistent throughout will allow things to stack alphabetically, which in many cases can be really, really helpful. So you could do something like that. So now I've got all of these different illustration pieces to work from. So I'm going to go ahead here and close this up, and I'm going to go ahead here and close this up, and then I'm going to go into Illustrator, and I'm going to create my new layout here. So this is the illustration file that I'm working on, and I probably don't need all of these things right now, so I'm going to get rid of them. I will probably need swatches. They will be helpful. I might need color, so it's always good just to get resituated with what you're looking at, and how you decide to work on it is completely up to you. But you're going to be making a new file for this, and there's not like it must be this size. It just has to be 11 by 17 or smaller in order for us to print a full bleed. All right? So I'm going to actually work in a square, and I can work in a square any size. I can really work up until the paper you print out on is 13 inches by 13 inches. So if you're planning on printing here in the lab, then that 13 inches by 13 inches would be a full bleed. So you really have to be somewhere more like 12 by 12. Then if we absolutely love what you make and you want to do it bigger, we can have that conversation, because we can print larger, but it's very expensive. So we want to work out all the kinks first. Now for my 215 people, this is different. There's no bleed edge on this. This is a straight illustration. There's no need for a bleed edge, right? Unless you think there is, then talk to me. But you don't need a bleed edge. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to say create. And it's going to create this new file. And again, I'm going to go right away and I'm going to save the file into my folder. So let's hope I can navigate back here. We went here, 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 and here. So this is my layout, and you'll notice that my two layout files, I'll end up with two, a live and a print, very much like the first assignment. So I'm going to name this EB10, let's call it Annie Demo. You can title it with a name, or you can just call it Project 1 Final, right? As long as it sits outside and there's a live and a print, I or anyone else who looks at it is going to be really clear on this is the layered version and this is the outlined version. So just name it to align with that. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to make sure that's an Illustrator file. We're going to say save, and we're going to say OK. All right, so now I have that nice file that I just made, and I'm going to pull up my layers so that I have them right out here in front of me, and I'm going to instantly name this figure so that I know that that's what lives on this layer. That way, a week from now when I've worked on my figure separately, I delete this layer or I delete what's on this layer and I put it back in there, and it's like a no-brainer. That's what lives here. So I'm going to go into this here. I'm going to make sure that any layer that I'm using is unlocked and that my template layer is locked. Please don't bring your template into this. This is not a place where you're fixing this. This gets drawn in this file. It gets moved to the other file. So once I have this, I can just grab everything that's here. I can go to Edit Copy. And this is very much like Project 1. We're just going to flip back into this. We're going to go to Edit Paste. We're going to go to Object Group. And that way, anytime we want to move this around, it's all grouped together. So as long as I use my Shift key, I can make them as big as my page, or I can make them teeny tiny. It's completely up to me, just with the Shift key, right? So it's that easy. And then I'm going to go ahead and lock this up. So if I'm going to bring one of my designs in, we're going to use Franz today. I'm going to go ahead and go to Open. And I'm going to navigate to this folder. And I'm going to grab this demo back file. And I'm going to open it up. Now, if I wanted to change things about this here, I certainly could do that. Oh, we'll pretend we didn't see that. We're not going to change anything about it because of that. No, I'm just kidding. We'll change this just for fun. And
there's like a lot of drawing inside.
Yes.
That was my first try ever.
I know. That's why I'm just not even going to say anything about it. I'm just going to grab it. So I'm going to grab this. No, I'm just kidding. Don't ever do this. No. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to move it back into here. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to paste. I'm going to group. I'm going to hold down my Shift key and grab from either side, and I'm going to make this the size that I want it on my page. And then I'm going to go ahead and throw that behind the figure layer so that they're on top of it.
Why?
Whoa, I don't know. I must have missed something. Just to illustrate, it actually kind of looks cool a little bit, but we could just really easily fix that by just going like this. Boom. Boom, 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 and just put that in there. Let me clean it up later. So you get the basic idea. I can lay this in here. Now in my case, I actually, and you were not required to do this, but certainly if you're a bit more advanced, you might want to do something like this. I did this. So if I go into my folder and I go to my templates folder, I go to my background. I actually created a file from my own artwork to put in the background of the piece. So I scanned it in and made it so that I could lay that into its own layer. So that's another option, right? And that would allow me then to go ahead and grab other things, like let's grab one of these. And this is another option for working with your particular files. Let's go back to my folder and go to my Project 1 folder. Go to my illustrations. Let's grab this one. So I could grab this whole thing. I'm not going to do anything to it there, but then I'm just going to very simply go ahead and put a new layer here, paste this in, group it. Use my eyedropper tool. Send this to the back, but it'll be on that particular layer. Let's go ahead and lock my background layer because I only want this layer, and this would end up being more like my frame layer, right? And then I can take these guys and I can move them around, and because they're on their own layer, whoops, I missed something on that one. I didn't get all of it. Then I can work right up to the edge of this page. Now I need to take my figures and I obviously need to move them behind the frame, so my layering becomes really important. But one of the things that we don't want to happen here is we don't want to end up with tons and tons of layers. This is not where you're going to build something. So if you're building something super complex for your frame, you want to probably do that in a separate file. If you're doing something simple like what I did, then you might want to just, come in here and work with, let's do that and that. We'll send it to the back on that layer. I'll send it to the back on that layer. Right, so then I can come through here, but I can still really easily come through, lock up layers, and change things in a moment however I want to change them, all right? So it's this idea of bringing these parts together, some of them fully rendered, some of the lighter work you're doing right here in Illustrator, but if you're doing a complex background, you want to build it in a separate place and bring it in. So now, tomorrow, when I'm feeling refreshed, I can go back into this illustration and I can work on it and refine it, and I can always come back in and just unlock this layer, grab them, delete them, put the new one in. And it's as easy as that. So it's the file management and the layer management that really in the end make your life easier. And what I find students tend to do is they get so wrapped up and so nervous about the process that they just start throwing a gazillion layers in there, and then they're like throwing one thing on each thing. If you plan it, right? If you manage it, like all of a sudden you have all these layers, you have no idea what they are, and they're blank, well, goodbye. If you plan it and you manage it, on the front end it seems like more work. On the back end, it's so much better. All right? So as you bring these parts together, remember that each item has its own integrity. I'm going to go ahead and save and close these. Only I could pick the one that you did that in, Fran. Sorry. Let's ignore. So your basic goal as you get started today, check your folder structure, make sure it's correct. And as you build these things in, make sure that you're thinking about how you're bringing them in. Vector to vector. Always cut and paste from one Illustrator file to the other. All right? Always cut and paste vector to vector. All right?